Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jody Liston with College and Prep. Want to welcome everybody to our newest and next in our series of live conversations with you on the Boarding School Advantage. I'm super excited today to be joined by my colleague and educational consultant, Elizabeth Hall, and we are thrilled to be joined today by Hebron Academy Headmaster Dan Marchetti and Director of Mental Health and Wellness, Amanda Miller. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you guys. We are just a couple minutes early on our Facebook page, giving folks a few minutes to find us and join us. And we're excited to have the conversation today during, we would all, I think, a term that may be overused at this point, but agree, unprecedented times, uncertain times.
Indeed.
Yeah, agreed. And I know that there are a lot of people that will watch this live with us today, and a lot of people that will watch this on replay and are thinking exactly what we've put out there is why boarding schools, what are the advantages of attending a boarding school, specifically a small boarding school. And especially now with what's happening with distance learning, we all know that probably sometime around spring break, kids had to leave and return home, even from boarding schools. And now everybody is looking to the fall and what that's going to look like. And so we're going to have a conversation today about why boarding schools, what are boarding schools going to look like in the fall? What does distance learning look like? And how can we be nimble and pivot to respond to the situation that we now find ourselves in? And what we, I think, would agree is things are going to be very different for, at the very least, probably the next year. So let's just take maybe one more minute and let the room fill up. I see a couple people have joined us already, so welcome, whomever you are. As people are joining us, we do want to remind you that we welcome your questions and your comments and your thoughts. So in the box, the comment box, feel free as we're speaking and we're communicating with each other. This is meant to be interactive. So those of you joining us live, please feel free to type your thoughts or comments or questions in the box, and we will either address them during our conversation or certainly at the end of the conversation. We're happy to take a Q&A for everybody. We want to make sure your questions are answered, and we want to make sure at the end that we provide you how you can contact us if you have more questions, so that we can have a conversation, because we always welcome conversation. So, all right, we're just a minute past 12 noon. We want to get started. We want to be mindful of everyone's time. So I'm going to say welcome once again. Dan Marchetti, head of school at Hebron Academy, Amanda Miller, director of mental health and wellness, Elizabeth Hall, my colleague and educational consultant at College and Prep, and I'm Jody Liston, president and founder at College and Prep. So let's get started. Let's dive in. Let's talk about, well, you guys take a moment and tell everybody a little bit about Hebron and about boarding school.
Sure. I'll take that one. First of all, we are really thrilled to be here and look forward to an engaging conversation. Hebron is a great school, and there are many great schools. And so at the outset, what I would say is to all the parents that are on the call, you're doing your work, you're doing your homework, which is what you should do. And the first step, I think, in the journey is often to work with a really good educational consultant. And right now you've got two right here on the call, so you're in the right place. It's a big decision to think about boarding schools, and particularly small boarding schools is what we're going to be talking about today. Hebron Academy is one of the oldest schools in the country. We were founded in 1804, and we are in Hebron, Maine. Which is a very safe, beautiful place. Perhaps never more popular than right now during this global pandemic. Maine has been very lightly affected. We're very fortunate about that. And Hebron sits on 1,500 acres of lakes, mountains, and vast expanse. And so it does feel a little bit like an island or a bubble in itself, in a way that is really refreshing in these difficult times. It's certainly made social distancing easier, and it's made the stay-at-home order much easier for all of us with children because we've been able to get out and enjoy our trails and be active, which is something that we value. But back to boarding school and back to Hebron. Hebron is an inclusive place. Hebron has 26 different countries represented at the school. We offer junior boarding through postgraduate, and it's a really inclusive place where there's no one student profile. We have students that can achieve to the highest potential in academics, and we have those that need tailored support for their academic guidance and for their social emotional health and wellness. And we'll talk about the way that we can offer wraparound support. But more importantly, you'd say, well, why would you have such a vast array of students? And it's because every student has great potential. And if a student identifies that we're the place for them and we agree, we think that diversity of learners, that neurodiversity, actually creates a wonderful portfolio within the community to create a powerful place to learn and, of course, to work and to serve. So we have kids from all walks of life, from all nationalities, and we really value that global experience in the small location of Hebron, Maine. I like to think it is a really active place, and I don't mean just physically, even though I sort of try to embody that as much as possible, but I mean active socially, active in a way of civic engagement, active around civil discourse, active in ways that encourage people to find their voice and to use it. And I think that boarding schools in general try hard to foster that. Some do it better than others, but I do think that is one of the benefits of boarding school, is that a place where you can be known and you can be needed. And I think that small boarding schools in particular allow that to happen. I went to a fairly large boarding and day school, around 700 kids. And in retrospect, I would have been, I love my school, don't get me wrong, but I would have probably been better served as a learner and as a student with my student experience at one of our northern New England schools like Hebron or some of our peers, where it's smaller and where you have an opportunity to stand out and to be yourself and to see yourself make a difference in the community. So obviously we are super fans of boarding schools, especially small boarding schools and especially Hebron, but we look forward to talking more about more of the details and answering questions as we go along.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's interesting. I know where you went to school, Dan, and I agree. It's a wonderful school.
It's a great school. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great school. And I think I think that's perhaps something that parents don't know is when because we speak our professional language, just like doctors speak their professional language, and we all look at them like we have no idea what you're saying, right? We say small boarding school. What that means to us is, right, parents may not understand as they're watching this, we're referring specifically to small boarding schools. And that means that there is a student population that doesn't exceed, I'm going to say approximately 300. I think that the official number is maybe 285, 255, but typically 300 schools and less. I know when Elizabeth and I are working with families and we're talking about small boarding schools with families, we're not talking about schools that have a population of students in the 600 or 800 or even 1,000. And you're right that sometimes that's absolutely appropriate for a student. And sometimes while those schools can offer very large athletic facilities and very, large cohorts of kids in the co-curriculars, small boarding schools can offer all of those same opportunities. But from a social, emotional, and from a learning perspective, small boarding schools may be the more appropriate for a given student.
Yeah, and you make a great point, and I completely agree with you. And I think one of the things I neglected to say about Hebron, which I think is we're certainly not the only ones, but we fall into this category where we have big school infrastructure for a small, close-knit community. So we have the athletic infrastructure of the larger schools and the opportunities. And if you shop around and you look closely at schools, you will find, for your interest, that you don't just have to look at what the rankings are. You have to think about fit, and you have to think about the way a place feels when you go there. Of course, that's more challenging right now with social distancing and the way that people are shopping around for schools. But there are creative ways to get on campuses and feel them out, even in these unique times. But yeah, we're definitely a small school with big infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jody, and I would also add, and hopefully you guys will get into this as you talk, one of the things that I really see as an advantage to the smaller boarding schools is you have a lot of clarity and a real sense of your mission and who you serve
Right.
best. And as much as you're talking about the diversity in terms of the types of learners that you're able to serve, as are many schools, that notion of being very clear on who you work best with because of your size, I think is a real advantage to the small boarding school demographic right now.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I'll just say why it's so important when you're considering any kind of a boarding school or any kind of alternative school to your public school that, of course, we'd love for folks to give us a call, but why it's so important to have somebody help you navigate the differences or the similarities between schools. And honestly, and I would be surprised, Dan and Amanda, if you don't encourage this when you're touring families, if you don't encourage them to look at more than one school. I think it's so important because there's not a way to know definitively for sure that one school is right for you or not, based on a website or based on a phone call, or really if you only tour one campus. It's only by visiting multiple campuses and really understanding the nuts and bolts of what that school, like, can you say, I absolutely, after seeing 3 schools or 5 schools or 7 schools, this is where I see myself and right where I see myself fitting in. I see myself in this dining hall. I see myself in this dormitory. I totally relate to this coach or that teacher, or my tour guide was like exactly the kind of person I would want to hang out with. And the only way you can know that is by actually having real experiences with multiple schools. And I encourage families to have that experience.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, I know it wasn't maybe as long ago, but was felt long ago when I was going through those processes, and I very much had in my mind for college a different school than where I matriculated. And when I visited and spent time there, I thought this is nothing like what I thought it was going to be like. Right. And so you really do need to spend the time and challenge your assumptions. And you talked about what is it, can I see myself in the dining hall? And I think that's just such a powerful powerful image and feeling, right? It's visceral. And I know that certainly when my wife and I toured Hebron, we felt so warm and welcomed by the community, and it was so clear that the people there wanted us to like the school. And it was such a unique experience to sort of feel like every single person that we met would go out of their way to say, oh, hey, look, it's someone who's visiting. Let's make sure that we introduce ourselves and that they have a great experience. And I think that that's much more common in small boarding schools than it might be in big ones, where it does feel a little bit more like a college, and maybe there is a higher level of independence. But with that independence may come a more fractured or more disparate sense of community. And I think that for kids right now, in a time where we're all separate but apart, there's a longing for community that I think that we're certainly seeing. Our students feel a deep appreciation for and a desire to get back to as fast as possible.
Yeah. And I'll speak to that, Dan, that all the student feedback I've heard when they describe our community, they describe it as family-like, where we have, the small boarding school has staff, faculty living right on the same floors. Every floor has a family and pets and kids, and so they really feel like their lives are nurtured and all parts of who they are can be seen and heard with a trusted family-like faculty member right in their living environment. Yeah. So that really is nice that students feel so comforted, and I think that small boarding schools are a great match for students looking for those close mentorships right in the fabric of their lives and being known by everyone on campus.
So let's dive in a little bit to, I think boarding schools are in general known for quote unquote academic rigor. And I think there is, and maybe should be, an assumption that if you attend a boarding school, we're going to assume you're going to get a good education. The academics are there, right? Whether it's a small boarding school, big boarding school, let's assume the academic rigor is there. But then let's drill down a little bit to, in a small boarding school, how do we support the students? How do we get beyond the assumption of a great education? What else is there in terms of Amanda, right? Health and wellness. How do we support kids who are perhaps have a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of social anxiety? Even in a small boarding school, 300 kids might be overwhelming. It might be a lot. How do you feel? How do we support kids in terms of their learning styles and multiple learning styles? Because there should not be an assumption that because you go to a boarding school, you may not have some type of academic challenge, right? Perhaps you struggle with math or foreign language is just not your thing, right? So how do we support kids best in a small boarding environment?
So I'll start. I'll start with this, and then I'll have Amanda backfill on what we do with counseling. And I think the way I would like to start is that I think that in small boarding schools in general, if they're doing their job right, they're places where kids have no excuses to fall through the cracks, and that's key, right? And you know, Jody, you so eloquently put it that maybe you have this deficit or perception of a deficit in one area, but you have these great competencies in others, and that so well describes so many kids that we see. And sometimes they may have a fractured sense of esteem around learning and about identifying as a learner, even though they have such great capacities and they're so smart and they have so much to offer. And so I think that a small boarding school inherently is an opportunity because of the size for those kids to shine and to thrive. Well, and so I'll speak to what we do at Hebron, and I think that even though in the areas of support, certainly around social, emotional, and counseling for a traditional school, I would say we're perhaps second to none for a school of our size. But I think in the academic supports, you would hope that other schools are doing these same things. And so even though it's about us, I think it translates well to the conversation. Yeah. So the way we look at it is that students come in and we'll have a learning profile that we know of them. And then there will be a learning profile that we develop of them. And so if a student comes in and identifies as having certain deficits or needs for extra support, whether it's English as a second language or whether it's something with math or processing or dysgraphia or writing or any of these other different things, they'll get a portfolio assessment from our academic guidance center. And then if they are in academic guidance, they'll have a coach that works with them specifically and communicates with them, their teachers, and their families in that triangle of support, right? So that everyone is unified, there's strong communication, and there are skills that are being worked on. So not necessarily content tutoring, but skills-based tutoring that often involve executive function because, who couldn't use a little executive function help these days, right? Right. And so we work on those in a way that has no stigma. That wonderful private school that I went to that we're not going to name, if you needed learning support, you went into the basement of the library, and everybody knew because you had to walk by everybody where you were going. It didn't feel good, right? So our learning support is up in the bright, airy, best view on campus at the top of the library. Zero stigma, very open, very accepting, and it's a place that people can drop in or people can have regimented support, including through things like a structured study hall. If we have a student that catches themselves on a red flag list around academics, we will pull together a team meeting that are often coordinated by my wife, Courtney, the Director of Student Success. And that will involve everybody that works with that kid, from coaches to dorm parents to teachers. And there'll be an assessment, information gathering, and then an action plan with targeted follow-up and communication to the student and to the family. And that is such a simple thing, right? And you would say, oh, well, that's obvious. But it's very rare that people are able to take the time to get that kind of a group together. And then some may go that far, but then lose it on the follow-up. And we take great pride in our ability to do that wraparound 360 evaluation of what's happening. Because we look at everything from discipline to academic support as an opportunity for education and for us to ask the question, why is this happening, and how can we get to a solution to get us to get this kid to be their best self and to their best potential. You talked about anxiety, and I'll let Amanda talk about mental health at the school, but one of the things is that everything can be situational with teenagers. We know this. It can be that way with my 9-year-old daughter, right? You know, I mean, you can have good days, bad days. You can have moments. And what got you to Hebron, what keeps you at Hebron, the struggles you have at Hebron or at a boarding school don't need to define you forever. And so if a student has situational anxiety around tests that manifest themselves during a certain type of the year and they need support, well, that support can be titrated down at some point when they no longer need it, but it doesn't mean that they don't get the support and check-ins. So there's not a one-size-fits-all look at both self-identity and treatment or support for our students. So we have the difference between drop-in counseling care that I would say a very high percentage of our kids use, as they should. It's hard to be an adolescent. We know this, right? And then, of course, we have the next levels up, which are counselors that come on site. We have DBT groups on site. We have great relationships with consulting physicians and consulting psychiatrists so that we can get continuity of care. And we do that really well with great communication and take really good care of our kids. So, Amanda, why don't you fill in whatever I missed on that?
Can I just say one thing though quickly before we go to Amanda? One of the things that I think is so helpful and relevant, and Jody and I often will experience families that are maybe hesitant to share their testing of their child or worried what a school is going to think. And I think you folks do a great job of this, and certainly there, like we've talked about, there are other schools that also can do a nice job. But it's the notion of wraparound support that you provide, and in a proactive manner. So from the beginning, really getting ahead of what are the needs, where might there be loopholes where a kid can fall through the cracks, and it's that ability to from the beginning really kind of map out a plan. And as an educational consultant, I so appreciate the opportunity to be able to partner with your admissions team, with you, Amanda, with Courtney, and to really be able to support a family and understanding what that can look like in the admissions process.
Yeah.
So when the student gets to campus, we're not starting, or 6 months down the road, we're not trying to catch up.
Yeah, there should be no surprises. And I think that a school shouldn't accept a kid they can't help and support. And so for us, it's what do you got? Let's see it. Let's review it. And you know, I think the consultants that work with us would say, we'll tell you if we can't best support a kid, and we'll help refer them to the right place. Because there are some things, you know, situationally that we might not be the best to handle. And I think that transparency and honesty, it should be fundamental to what we do, because at the end of the day, we're in this business to help kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think parents sometimes think, and perhaps Amanda, you can speak to this. I do think sometimes parents think that if their child does struggle with anxiety or does have a learning challenge or learns differently, that a boarding school won't accept them. And that just couldn't be farther from the truth. There are, which is why we're here today, right? There are boarding schools, traditional boarding schools, that are appropriate for any type of learner. And it's just about finding the right school and the right fit, this is why we're here today, to talk about these things. Amanda, share with us a little bit about the mental health and wellness component that Hebron provides, and if you could also expand on that, not just on Hebron, but you know, obviously we work with it, right? There's a consortium of small boarding schools as well. So as a whole, yes, what Hebron specifically does, but also as a whole, what are small boarding schools striving to do, as we are seeing more and more and more kids in reality with, you know, anxiety or depression or just struggling with adolescence in general. How are we addressing that as a community of boarding schools also?
So to address the reality that 1 out of 4 students in the 8th grade through college age have debilitating anxiety, and 1 out of 5 have depression that affects their daily life, we offer holistic mind, body, spirit support. So the ways that a small boarding school can do that are integrated into every realm of the student life. It can be through dorm curriculum, which we do, paired with advisory small group processing, paired with a special outside speaker to inspire. and be a role model. Partnership with local college like Bates College to bring in college age students to model their life stories and how they've dealt with anxiety and depression, body image issues, positive masculinity. They lead social media campaigns on campus. They come in and do workshops with our students. So we want to bring out the holistic educational aspects that can elevate their well-being in all dimensions. So we target sleep hygiene and technology balance. We involve students in our technology wellness committee. And we talk about goal setting. Through the winter months, we often will say, pick one area of your wellness, whether it be nutrition or sleep or technology boundaries, and come up with one goal that's doable and meaningful for you. And how are you going to get there? What small steps are you going to take? And this is not just in one setting. We're having these conversations, whether it be prevention around substance use, looking at current events and relevant issues in society. And we're bringing that to their attention through academic spheres, residential life spheres, advisory relationships, and then on campus. So a small boarding school can react in real time to address what are the issues that our young people are facing now. And we prepare during the summer months to anticipate what these needs are, and we scaffold these supports in every aspect of their lives. So healthy relationships came up as a topic. We had students from many different cultures and many different models of relationships and ways of communicating with intimate partners. So we said we need to do a workshop for these students to enrich their sense of safety and empower them in their relationships to have appropriate boundaries. So we offered a workshop because we knew that was a real issue right then that year. So a small school can react nimbly and adjust and adapt. And so what we can offer when you refer to wraparound support is an environment that does not stigmatize mental health. We have a very strong respect team on campus, and many civil rights teams across the country are not only addressing race, ethnicity, cultural issues, and gender identity and expression to make sure everyone feels safe and welcome, but they're looking at mental health, and they're looking at how to destigmatize access to mental health care. So our respect team, for example, some of their initiatives could be rolled right out this year with a lot of traction. They wanted to have peer support training. They said, I want to help my peers, but I don't feel like I have the skills to listen to them. And so I invited a specialist certified in training peer support, and we educated all of our respect team members on how to offer this wellness, mental health, peer support, and know where the red flags were, where they needed to refer to a professional and listen to me or a counselor on campus. So I think that because our student culture is so strong in recognizing the need for mental health as a universal need for all people, we all have mental health. And just acknowledging that we all have emotions day to day, and we're all in a different place in our journey and our maturation. These students will reach out to each other. And so having a strong student culture is really important, and peer leaders who can take that and say, talk to me. So they have a QR code they can scan, and it's on posters, it's on the website, and they can get right to a concern form and sign up for a peer support session. Even remote learning, you're often offering open tables so that if a student has an issue in their community around discrimination, harassment, etc., they could reach out to a trained peer support person and have live Zoom support on a regular basis.
Right.
So those are just some of the examples of how we support all of our students through wellness education. But for those who have anxiety disorders or a history of depression, we have drop-in hours that's available through my office. And we have also a counselor that they can have weekly sessions with and a formalized treatment plan. And it's very approachable and accessible. It's right on the main floor by the dining hall in the health center. And people come out and want to chat and want to say, oh, Miss Miller, I've got some updates on the roommate situation.
Yeah.
So I can pop in anytime. I live right on campus. I raise my kids here. So it's accessible and it doesn't feel stigmatized. I'm in an ivory tower and we'll judge them. It feels like, she's a person who likes me as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important. The relationships that, and that's actually, I have three topics in my head that I wanted to cover. And one thing that you just said reminded me of when you said, you're not in the ivory tower, it makes me think of the relationships that form on campus, right? That are, kids love their parents. My son goes to a boarding school as well. And he loves to come home and he loves to be with us, but he has a relationship with his advisor. He has a relationship with his coach. He has a special relationship with the kids on his athletic team, but that's a bond that's, it's a pretty strong bond. So I think the relationships and the growth and maturity and character building that happens on a boarding school campus is unlike any other education. So that's one thing I want to talk about. I also want to talk about substance. And I don't want to leave today without discussing, because I know that many parents will ask Elizabeth and I, how do boarding schools manage with the vaping and the right? Like you can't necessarily, I know it has its own distinct smell, but you can't really smell it like you would good old fashioned pot back in the days. It's a very different thing now. So the vaping and the selling of cartridges on campuses and all of that. And those honest conversations we have to have with parents about what that's looking like right now and how boarding schools are managing that. I think that's an important topic. And then the third thing I want to make sure we cover is, what are we doing about the fall? What is that going to look like? Are we continuing to do virtual tours over the summer? Are boarding schools planning on having kids back on campus? Again, I refer to, I know we all belong to various organizations and consortiums, and the conversations that we are all having. So 3 super important things I want to touch on. And I'll let one or all of you take it from there.
Well, let's talk about the fall, because I think that, that's probably first and foremost on anybody's mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I can speak for Hebron, and in general, I think I can speak certainly for the Northern New England schools that is a cohort that I communicate with regularly. It's been one of the great things about this pandemic is that it has brought school leaders together in a way that's really collaborative and not competitive, but very mutually aligned. And I've really appreciated that. So Northern New England is a great place to be regarding COVID. And we've just had a very low infection rate. Maine is essentially socially distanced by design, with the exception perhaps of the moose population or Portland, right? Portland's a great city and has obviously been hit harder, but in general, Maine has been a good place to be. So we are planning absolutely to be open. And I believe I speak for my association members as well, who are also planning that. And we are planning to be open, but also nimble and flexible. And so what does that mean? Well, we will be open for in-person learning and for the school of Hebron that we know and love, and the boarding school way of life in the time of COVID without a vaccine. And so what does that mean? It means that we're going to have to figure out how to get kids to campus in a way that is the least impactful for them. And so we're all being very creative. If you have to self-isolate, and everyone has to be alone, we're looking at relationships with local summer camps, most of which are empty right now, so that kids can have their own cabin to self-isolate for a week. So we're trying to be really flexible about safely bringing kids back. What that also means for Hebron in particular, starting in August, we'll start welcoming kids back as soon as they can come if they're able to get a flight, well before our traditional start date, so that by the time school should be up and running, we're through the clearing of determination of disease, etc., and infection, and able to get things back to life as normal as possible. But it also means that we will offer synchronous and asynchronous online classes for students who haven't been able to get a visa or an I-20, or if their family, is the type that says, look, I want to stick with this, but without a vaccine, I don't want my kid to go out of my home. We respect that. We understand that. We also understand that for students who are returning that already have visas and I-20s, they can come, and that shouldn't be a problem. But for places where the embassy is still closed and they can't get a visa, we don't want Hebron to not be attainable for them. So our faculty is totally committed to that. So it'll be a blend. So traditional regular classes, and then our faculty will do more to make sure that the content is available for those students who are away for whatever period of time that might look like. But we're growing more confident by the day that school will be open, Hebron will be open. And I also fundamentally believe that it would be a very dark thing for our world and our nation to go another year without kids being able to go to school, because we know that kids benefit greatly from being in school in general, and specifically from being in these warm and nurturing communities. One of the other adjustments that Hebron has made is, because again, we get kids from all over the globe, we will be open for kids through all of our breaks. So if a family says, you know what, I'm committed to getting my daughter there, but I'm nervous about Thanksgiving, that's cool. To come have Thanksgiving with me and my family. You know, we're open. We're not sending kids home, and we'll be open so that if a kid is not able to go, we're staffed and we're ready to keep them safe and engaged until the end of the year, which is a commitment we feel is the right one, and also just makes sense given the different ways that different families will react to the pandemic based on where they're from and based on their beliefs.
An important I'm sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was just going to ask, one of the things that we're hearing a little bit about and seeing is either schools moving up their arrival dates to July, for example, and staggered arrivals of students. Likewise, the thought, and Jody and I also work with students who need more therapeutic placements, and those are very tight containers, and meaning the students don't come and leave campus. Likewise, it's very controlled when parents come. I've heard from some schools that they're thinking about having many, what we in our industry refer to as closed weekends, where kids don't go home.
Yep.
On weekends, parents don't arrive to campus. For parents who are new to the boarding school world, and as you think about how things might look different, can you talk to the ways that if schools have to enforce some of those more closed weekends, for example, a lot of parents want to still be able to be connected to their kids and to their teachers, not in a helicopter parent way, but how will you still allow that and encourage that?
Well, I want to be very clear in that we will be publishing our guidelines for what it will look like for Hebron later in the summer. So everything I'm saying, is well intended, but could be adjusted or changed. However, you're hitting on something that's really important. When I met with administrative team recently to talk about orientation and registration, we said, oh my God, we've got to blow all this stuff up. This is contactless drop off with parents, right? I mean, it's going to be wildly different. And what it comes down to is understanding that this is not a year that will be the normal that we're used to. And what it will mean is that schools need to build trust in a distant way, and that families need to engage in that partnership. And so it's up to the schools to offer the platform to build that trust so that handoff can happen. And I would say that some of the things that we've adapted, given the online learning and given what we're doing now with Zoom, are things we wouldn't have thought of before or wouldn't have thought would be acceptable. And many of them aren't going to go away, because our opportunity to engage in meaningful ways can be replicated and enhanced via technology. So we're talking about how do we onboard our students and build our community in a separate but apart way. And I can give you a great example. We have a great tradition of all school meeting, as many schools do. It's an anchor point. We do it 3 or 4 times a week, and we opted to do it once a week via Zoom. And it was the most attended and prescribed, or it was the most attended event that we had of the week. And kids loved it, and they were engaged, and they were enthusiastic. And, if we have a situation where we can't have gatherings of kids of more than 50, we're not going to be sitting in the chapel together for all school meeting. And so we have to adapt to these things to build trust, to build opportunities. And it may be a year where we don't have homecoming, and that is terrible. But it also means that we have to invest in things like live streaming so that our kids' activities and games can be brought to the world. And those are also things that are value adds for the family that wasn't going to be able to visit anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an adjustment. It will not be what we're used to, and we're looking forward to getting back to that as soon as possible.
Yeah. Oh, we all are. Dan, are you planning on, and I'm wondering, I mean, we too are speaking with many, many, many schools every day, as are you. The one thing I haven't asked anybody, and so I'm going to pose it to you as a representative of all boarding schools at the moment.
I do speak for them all, so that's
good.
Yeah.
Terrific. My question is, what are you doing about masks and hand sanitizers? Is that going to be a requirement on boarding school campuses?
It's unclear. It's unclear for at this point. We are still waiting for the state of Maine to come up with guidelines and recommendations, but we'll be prepared for that. And I think that the state of Connecticut actually came out with a really, really great blueprint for how boarding schools and colleges could reopen. And so we're following a lot of that, which comes down to there may be places where you have to have a mask on, but you have these units of essentially family or household units where kids can still be kids because they're in that same pod. So what it may mean is integrating our housing differently than we normally would. It may mean that kids live by association of either grade and class or perhaps athletic team, things that we might normally wildly avoid, but may make functional sense to do for this one short period of time, so that we aren't having to do that. But I think that incumbent on all of this is that all schools are scrambling right now to come up with these protocols, but also to procure PPE and to make investments in infrastructure to best set their kids up, and also buying testing and determining what the right piece is. And I know that, again, talking about collaboration, our regional associations have been really helpful in guiding us around ways that we can collectively be stronger to make sure that we have those resources and are able to best serve our students and keep our families safe.
So families will come to the school store and get their books, their lumberjack tie, and their lumberjack mask.
I think that mask may arrive before they get on campus. Yeah, exactly. We'll have a bin.
It's part of the new welcome kit.
I mean, hey, look, at least it's harder to vape through the mask, right?
There you go. All right, there's my segue into, can we talk about, look, that's very real right now. And I know, Elizabeth, I think part of every conversation we have, every new family anyway, they want to know what schools are doing to address the vaping issue. And we can't turn a blind eye, and we can't say we don't know or it's not happening. So let's hear from a head of school. Let's hear, what's the response?
Well, I think that any educator that stands here and tells you that there isn't a problem with vaping on their campus is a liar. And that's just a fact. Right. We have it. Everyone has it. What's different is how you address it, how you deal with it, how you're willing to talk about it, how you're willing to educate, and how you're willing to react and respond. The first thing I would say is we are not a one-strike school. I don't fundamentally believe in that. I'm glad I didn't go to one. So we look at all of these as opportunities to educate. We obviously want to catch kids doing things that are good, but when we do catch them doing things that aren't, it's an opportunity to educate and to better get to know them, and to give them the opportunity to do the right thing, and to treat themselves and their bodies and their peers with respect. We have a robust program for how we help kids with cessation around these things and how we educate, and I'll let Amanda talk about that. But I guess on the outset, if you're a parent thinking that by sending your kid to private school that they're not going to be tempted, you're wrong. And we are not the antidote to those things. However, we are great environments to have a targeted approach towards helping a kid make good decisions, understand what they value, what they believe, what they care about, and help to support them to pursue that in their daily life.
I agree.
I'll emphasize what we do to prevent new use. We provide education about the neurochemistry of dependence, and in advisory and in dorm setting, like I said, we have this team collaboration approach. We have outside speakers come in, which we had this year. We have dorm curriculum and advisory curriculum about what your brain is seeking and how the nicotine receptors proliferate and expand. We show them animated videos about what's happening in their brain, and we talk about how companies are marketing to youth. And so we show specific examples of how brands, social media, etc., are marketing towards them and using fake avatars and people on social media to blow through, vape circles. And they really are trying to, I guess, bring more awareness. The advisors, the dorm parents, they're trying to bring more awareness about how youth are victims of this marketing.
Yeah.
And to understand what their brain is becoming when it's dopamine deficient, especially, and they're not getting their dopamine from exercise or appropriate nutrition, how the substance is a quick fix, like the Happy Meal version of dopamine. So we have open dialogue and questions and really thought-inspiring conversations and advisory. But we have a student task force as well. We have students who have been affected by dependency in their home lives and their history, and they have come to leadership where they want to be resources, peer supports, again, for others who are thinking about using and want to talk about it. So I've had 2 students come up and give me anonymous feedback saying, hey, this is happening and I want to do something about it. Can I be on this task force?
Yeah.
So student leadership and also partnering with parents on education is a big prevention element, where before the students even get on campus, I'm sending out information in the Hebron Connected parent newsletter. So parents know exactly what vapes look like, how kids are ordering them online, what type of packaging might be coming through, to know the signals and signs and to partner with us. And I think that's a gift of this time, is that we're doing more parent engagement than ever through workshops online around health and wellness and how to support the wellness of their students or child over the summer, over breaks, because sometimes substance use regression happens over breaks when they have greater access.
Sure.
So I always partner with parents before breaks to refresh them on, appropriate things to be looking out for.
Yeah.
And to reach out to me to consult. And this is all very confidential information. So students know that if they come and talk to me, it doesn't go anywhere. They have a right to receive substance use counseling, and no administrators involved. We also have an amnesty program where students can turn in materials with no consequences to get it off campus and to keep their community safe. So we do an extensive amount of education, parent partnership, and student leadership to create a healthy culture.
Amanda, you said something that's so critical, I think, and again, it comes back to one of the beauties of the small boarding schools, and it's that engagement, the ability to engage with the student, with the parents. And I was on the phone, it was 2 weeks ago, actually, and with a prior client of mine, and the mom is interested in help for their daughter for a private school placement, the younger daughter. And I had placed the older daughter into a boarding school, and the mom said they have a college daughter and then a high school daughter at boarding school. And she said, the school that is doing so well is the boarding school with their distance learning. And even over the brand name college. And what I'm hearing from my clients who have kids in private school and in particular boarding is that ability to connect with their kids who are remote right now, and the support that the parents have. And I just think it's such a critical thing as these students and the parents are trying to navigate, all of us are trying to navigate unknown water, if you will, and uncharted territory. And yet the structure that's in place on campus, and even not lose the structure like your drop-in that you're talking about, the drop-in availability for support, it's those different layers, if you will, of support that exist in the small boarding schools, I think are so critical.
Yeah,
regardless of who
parents can even sign up for my remote office hours. I send out the links regularly so they can click on it and access an appointment that's convenient for them. So I have regular family consults on how their child is doing and collaborate with them on family type things and make referrals as needed. But the counseling is continuing remotely through our school counselor. My consults with parents has only increased, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to partner with them to get through some tough times as their youth are struggling with maybe some difficulty adjusting to the remote learning. Yeah. But the relationships have remained very strong, especially with clubs, student clubs. We've had the GSTA be very active, the Respect team, as I mentioned, but even student-initiated clubs that are new, like the Magic Club. Like, students are promoting it, and they're putting themselves out there. And so they are certainly engaging in their passions. And whether it's donating masks and making masks at home for the local food pantry, or doing a Minecraft tournament over the weekend, they are really willing to put themselves out there and offer their cooking classes and have those connections stay strong even through remote learning.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth, your point was really that these are schools that cultivate a sense of connection between many players and the students, and between the families and between each other. And it's that palpable sense of connection that allows kids to get the support they need and to feel like they're a part of something bigger than they were before, which makes them feel less alone and more capable to take on great challenges and be their best self.
Yeah, I think, and I know we just have a few minutes left, and so I think I'd like to address just lastly, attending a boarding school, and perhaps this is my opinion, I hope we all share it though, provides the opportunity for kids to grow and mature and individuate and self-identify, develop character, in ways that, there are some terrific public schools, there are some terrific independent day schools, but a boarding school environment, both small and large, whichever is right for you, provides an opportunity for growth in so many areas. I don't think that can be replicated in some of those other environments. And so before we close, I'd love for you to just address the specialness of what it means to attend a boarding school.
Sure. Well, the unintended irony, of course, is that we're independent schools because we're mission driven, but really we're independent schools because we teach kids to be independent. And we teach them to be independent in an environment where they're still connected and they're a part of something and there are safeguards. But I like to think of it as, yes, we've talked a lot about our support systems, and those are certain things that some parents will be looking for. But even the parent that's looking for a great deal of support and has the fear that their child might fall through the cracks is also looking for their kid to excel in their area of passion. And I think that, and I tell our students this at Hebron all the time, challenge us to have something that we can't offer you, so that we can find a faculty member, an adult in the community, someone who's interested and capable to help you grow that talent or that passion or that interest. I mean, Amanda talked about a Magic Club, entirely student-driven, initiative from a kind of a quirky kid who has a cult following now, and a fan base because he has this incredible talent and skill. And so it's that opportunity to build your independence as a learner. It's your opportunity to try on new versions of yourself in a community of support, in a community of feedback, and to really grow into whatever version of yourself that might be, at a time when that's what you're supposed to do. That's what adolescence is about. It's about discovering who you are in this world and discovering what you believe and what you care about. And I think that the independence of boarding schools absolutely help foster that, because of the sense of community and because of the opportunity for kids to grow and to thrive in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
Our administration is so receptive to student initiatives. Every time a student will start talking and daydreaming about something that would be fulfilling or, manifest their passion, I'm like, I think you should talk to Ms. Carton or Mr. Marchetti about this. And the ball starts rolling within the next day or two. I'm like, this is a beautiful place to work. So I love that small, intimate responsiveness of that environment.
I always tell parents when they say, they're so worried about sending their kid away. I say, you need to reframe this and look at it through a different lens, because you're not sending them away, you're providing them with an opportunity. And there's so many opportunities within that larger opportunity. And like you, Dan, I went to a larger private boarding school. And for me, I still to this day say, they taught me how to study to learn rather than studying to pass. And
Right.
that love for learning is something that's so much a part of who I've always been, but it came alive there. And whatever school, in terms of a boarding school or private day school, there are just so many opportunities for students. And the more parents can view it through these different lenses, I think it is that opportunity. So
Yeah. We see parents that have that reticence that will to send them away, right? Because there's that sort of depending on who your friends are and their experiences, etc. People don't know how to feel about it, especially nowadays when sometimes we're seeing more and more it's the student's idea to come. And what we see often is parents that had great relationships with their kids who have improved relationships with their kids. Absolutely. Because their kids value being home when they're home. And they value that when they're home, they get to be a kid. They're not arguing about homework with their parents. They really appreciate that time away when they come back. And the parents really appreciate that time with their kids when they come back and when they're away. So I think that it's not something to feel stigmatized about or shameful of. I think you're spot on in saying you're providing them with a new opportunity to explore and grow and to create value. And I think that in many cases it can absolutely improve the parent relationship. And it's never been easier to stay in contact. I mean, think there are many of us that kind of miss the days when it was one payphone at the end of the hallway, and you didn't have so much contact. But
you signed up for the time that you got the phone, and
right? Exactly.
Didn't get to call. That was
so. But the fact is that there's so many more opportunities for people to share in the experience, even from far away. That it's a great time to consider boarding school for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're going to start to wrap up here. I want to thank you, Dan, and you, Amanda, from Hebron Academy. We want to encourage families, if you're watching today, whether you're watching live or perhaps you're watching this on replay, we encourage you to take a little look at Hebron, a very special little place tucked away in Maine. We also want to encourage you, perhaps if you'd like to know about boarding schools in general, you'd perhaps like to just have a conversation, please reach out to either myself or to my colleague, Elizabeth Hall. We can be reached. I'm going to pop it right up onto the screen so that you can find us. I will put it on there. You can reach us at collegeandprep.com, shoot an email or call the office directly. We'd be very happy to have a conversation with you to discuss Hebron and many, many other wonderful small boarding or large boarding schools and what might be right for your son or daughter. We also just want to say there's so much going on in the world today. So many things that are unsettling and unknown and uncertain. And so wherever you are, we hope that you and your family are well and continue to be safe and feel well. And we want to express our concerns about the state of affairs. And I think I just want to put a little tag here that Hebron and many, many, many of the boarding schools are an inclusive and diverse and welcoming community. Whoever you are, whatever you believe in, whatever color your skin is, whatever religion you worship, we stand with you, we support you, and you are welcome at Hebron and at every boarding school that we have the privilege of working with. Yeah. So we thank you for spending time with us today, an hour of your day. We appreciate you and your time and welcome you to reach out at any time to connect with us. So with that, I'm going to say again, thank you to all of you for joining us today and be well.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
think we're ending. I'm waiting for the final. I believe we're done, but it's spinning. So
Great.
the wheel is spinning. Can anybody see on Facebook to make sure that we're not still live? Julie, can you see? Christine?
Mine says we're live, but I'm not on Facebook.